Hi, and welcome to Football and High Heels Presents. We are back after a long hiatus, thanks to life getting in the way and the little thing having 2 jobs to work, But I'm back and better than ever, and we're going to shift gears from football today, but we're going to have that a little on later on today. But we're talking gymnastics again, and Katrina is back to discuss this with us. Welcome.
Thanks.
Yeah, first of all, I want to say, even though we're a couple weeks late, congratulations to Lori Hernandez on winning Dancing with the Stars. I mean, it wasn't a big surprise for me. I know it wasn't for you either, but I'm really proud of her because she did really well this season.
Yeah, I mean, I was like, I thought it was interesting how they had it outside and on a platform, which was different, and I know that was due to security reasons, but it was kind of interesting.
Yeah, it was really interesting. I was really surprised about that, but whatever. It was so fun to watch, so I was excited about it. So I'm really proud of her. And I think she's the youngest winner they've ever had. So it was nice to watch her win for once. So there you go. So I'm excited about that. But anyway, now that that's over, obviously it's been over for quite a while. We're now into more of the gymnastics. Tell us a little bit about what's going on in the gymnastics world.
So your sound's cutting in and out, by the way.
Oh, I know. I don't know what's going on.
Okay, just wanted to let you know.
I gotta love being on live TV and making things happen. Now I know how Tom Bergeron feels every week.
So we're going to start, let's see, today's December 3rd, the end of January, I believe. I have to check the meet calendar. The end of January kind of kicks off the NCAA, or the National Collegiate of Athletic Association's gymnastics season. And they basically, there's 3 tiers of schools. They have Tier 1, which is your big schools like Stanford, UCLA, Florida, schools like that. And then you have your Tier 2 and your Tier 3 schools, and they compete in different leagues. And then they compete basically every weekend until April. And they compete to gain enough scores, which are called regional qualifying scores. Once that process starts, they have to get a certain amount of qualifying scores to make it to nationals. And so nationals are in April, usually the second to last weekend or the last weekend in April. And there's a process of how they do their championships. So that's pretty much the process and what goes on for collegiate gymnastics.
Oh, wow. That's really interesting. So it kind of sounds like what's going on with college football right now. The same thing. We just can't say just won their big game. So now we're picking the Big Ten. So it basically sounds like the same process, if I'm understanding it correctly.
Yes, it's pretty much the same process.
It sounds like very interesting and like a lot of fun. And are there any gymnasts that you think we should watch for in each year at this point that you can think of?
There are so many, probably because there are so many schools and so many different what you're looking for. You're going to watch for, because they're basically Division 1. Schools are, so Stanford, UCLA, and Oregon are kind of the big 3 in Pac-12. And then you have Oklahoma, Michigan, Minnesota are kind of your Midwest schools. And then you have for SEC, you have Florida, Georgia, Alabama, Arkansas. I think that's the kind of big names in the Southeast. And then there aren't a whole lot of big schools in terms of powerhouses for gymnastics on the East Coast. So those are kind of your big schools to look out for. Definitely, if you watch gymnastics for a long time, you'll see there are elites that have competed for the United States come over and do NCAA. She just retired this spring, but Bridget Sloan, who was the 2009 world champion, competed for University of Florida. And right now, kind of the big elites that are transferring, Madison Koshin, who competed at the Rio Games, is going to compete for UCLA. She'll start as a freshman. Kyla Ross, who competed in 2012, will be also at UCLA. I think that's the only current elites that are going. think that's it. I think medicine is the only one going to school right now. There's a couple of that were elites that have done their national letter of intent, but they won't start until further down the line.
Gotcha. Now, how is it different for Madison competing in the Olympics in comparison to competing rather in something like this? Is it the same kind of process, or is it a little bit different of a process?
It's a different scoring system, so they actually compete out of a 10. They compete with what's called the Junior Olympic Code, and it's what's used up until elite. It's used levels basically 1 through 10, and so it's out of a 10, and you see a lot of like 995s or 985s, and so it's a different scoring system. It's kind of what the old system used to be, and it's not as difficult. You will see big skills, but they won't be, the routines aren't as difficult. I mean, they're still difficult, but they're not elite level for the most part. You see some elite level skills, like some bar releases, some floor passes, but it's definitely what in the gymnastics world is watered down. And so it's a different feeling, and it's more about the team atmosphere and giving that team spirit. You'll see a lot of cheering and a lot more excitement in terms of the team. And so basically they compete 6 gymnasts, 5 scores count, and which is different than Olympic level, competing where it's 3 up, 3 count for the finals. This is 5 up, or 6 up, 5 count. And that's kind of the big differences you'll see. I don't expect Madison's bar routine to be the same level in terms of for throwing. She'll probably only do 1 release move. They have to do 1 release move for NCAA. And I think they've changed it. I have to double check on the code, but I think they've changed it so they have to do a single bar release, meaning they have to do basically a release move on the high bar. They can't. It used to be a lot of gymnasts would do a release from high to low, and that would count as their release, but I think they've changed that code. And I don't know if it's implemented in this season or if it's going to be for next season, but they have since changed that code kind of to make it a little more harder than what they were doing. And so you will see a lot of the same routine construction in terms of beam and floor. Well, mostly beam, well, mostly bars. You see a lot of the same types of skills, just because they're what's good for level 10s, which a lot of college athletes are. They come out of level 10 and go directly to college. So that's what you'll see.
Wow, that's really interesting. I didn't know there was that much of a difference in it. I figured we'd basically be seeing the same things we saw from her in the trials, but it's a really interesting way, and I'm actually glad because it kind of shows different skills that they have. So I'm curious to see. Now, is this going to be broadcast on TV? How can we watch it as viewers and big gymnastics fans like we are?
You'll have to check with your provider because each provider is different. Sometimes ESPN will show them. ESPN definitely will broadcast nationals. They will also, last year, they broadcast nationals online, so you can stream it. You do have to have a cable login, unfortunately. There are ways you can get what's called a VPN, and you can get a VPN to watch around cable logins. But check your provider. ESPN will show them. I have logins. I have a login for the West Coast, so I get to see Pac-12 stuff because it's shown on the Pac-12 network. Unfortunately, you can't go back and watch, like, let's say, previous years because a company called Flow Gymnastics actually owns the copyright to those, and they've cracked down on them being on YouTube, which is a total bummer, but whatever. There's issues with that. So check your cable provider. You will probably, because you're in Pennsylvania, be getting Penn State meets. and maybe Penn if they broadcast them. But every once in a while, I can check ESPN, they'll show them. Usually it ends up being like a big name meet, so like usually, so when I lived back home, it was like the UCLA meets were broadcast because they're a big name school. Or sometimes I'd get Oklahoma versus Florida or Oklahoma versus a big name school because it's Oklahoma. So you kind of have to watch ESPN and see. It's kind of random too what they'll show and what they don't. So just kind of check your cable provider, unfortunately.
That's always the way it is. I can never give you a straight answer of what's playing where. So I'm going to be checking everything religiously to see what I can watch and when. And it kind of sucks that we can't watch things from previous years or anything like that, because I'd love to watch it and compare how people have progressed or see how things were back then versus how they are now. But
Yeah.
I'm sure eventually there's going to be a way to do it. We'll see, though. But I noticed you told me this, and I was completely shocked when I heard this. There's a thing called fantasy gymnastics. And considering anyone that's followed the show and knows me, because I epically fail at fantasy football, ladies, you can't really choose fantasy football picks based on who you think is, because I keep getting alerts. You epically fail, Sammy. You epically fail at fantasy football. But I didn't even know this was a thing. Is this a new thing, or has this been around for a while?
It's been around, so this is my my 4th year. So this is the 4th year it's been around. It was actually started by a young woman who coded everything herself. Like it's so impressive. Like she learned to code just to create this because she was sick of not having a fantasy game for her sport. And so yeah, she learned to code. It's incredible, her story. And so yeah, it's been around 4 years, about 4 years. And basically, it's a little different than fantasy football, and in that it's a lot harder to trade players. That only got implemented last year. And so basically, you sign up. It's free. If you Google fantasy gymnastics, you can find out information there. You can sign up. The draft is open. So what you do is you draft the gymnast that you would want to have on your team. And then once the draft closes, she puts it into an algorithm which sorts everybody into a league or a conference is what they're called, gymnastics. And then within your conference, your team gets drafted. Now, you may not get your number one player, or even, I think a couple of years ago, my first pick wasn't until like round 6. Like I didn't get my 6th gymnast until it was awful. My first year was so bad. And then you get sorted. So then your gymnasts, you have your team, and I think it's 15 to 20. And then once the meet starts, you'll see when your team, like when your gymnasts are competing, because you won't necessarily have gymnasts from the same actual gymnastics team competing in your fantasy team. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. Like I had one girl from Air Force last year, and I had 3 from Alabama. So it kind of just depends on what you want. There are what's the word for it? There are strategies to draft your gymnasts. But anyway, once you have your gymnasts, you'll see when and who competes. And then on Wednesdays of the week, you'll pick who you want to send in as a lineup. And you can pick any gymnast you want out of your teams. So you kind of pick who. The first 2 weeks are kind of rough because you don't really know who competes what, when they compete what. Some gymnasts don't actually compete at all. Some only compete towards the end of the season because of injury, or they're saving them for postseason. And so you kind of have to a little bit about what the teams are, kind of do your research on who competes what, when they competed, their scores. You'll you'll submit the lineup, and then once the scores are all tabulated, usually like Sunday or Monday night, then scores will be updated, and you'll see what score your gymnast got. And then you can build off of that to see, okay, so let's say I don't want to put in this gymnast for vault, or I don't want to put in this gymnast for beam because they're consistently getting low scores. And you want to try to get the best weekly average you can, because that counts towards the conference scores. And then you compete against the people in your conference. And at the end of the season, the top 2 people go basically to nationals, and they compete against everybody else. And then once postseason hits, you're kind of done. But that's pretty much it. It's a little more complicated than fantasy football because the gymnasts have different scores, and yeah, but it's a lot of fun, and doing your draft is kind of and so it's a lot of different people. Just like I tell people I play fantasy gymnastics, and they're like, "What?" They don't get it. So it's just kind of fun to freak people out like that.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of fun, and you actually got me to sign up. I still have to finish picking my people, but I'm going to get there. But now, is it just people that are competing in this, or is it Olympian? That's what I'm getting a little confused on. A lot of it I didn't recognize.
Yeah, so the 2 sites you're going to want to check out for information on how to scores for how to draft your team are the Balance Beam Situation, who's run by a guy named Spencer, and he also commentates on a gymnastics podcast called Gymnastics, if you want to check that out. There's a lot. He has a whole NCAA preview, and so he talks about freshmen, past scores, whatnot, and that's kind of an overview of NCAA and freshmen coming in. He does a huge freshman preview every year. The other one you're going to want to look at, because you're going to want to look at schools that technically aren't necessarily Division I, but will get you consistent high all-around scores, or consistently high all-around, like let's say you need a vaulter and you're not sure who to pick. The site is called the Road to Nationals. If you just Google Road to Nationals Gymnastics women's, because you're going to look at women's only. There's 4 links at the top of the screen. It's the very, very right-hand one. It just says women's. All the teams in NCAA that can have a gymnastics team, and it'll list their rosters. And you can see from last year's scores, from 2016, who got what for the season. And that's nice to see. Okay, so if you're drafting your team, let's say you're a little weak on bars, which I have an issue of being weak on bars. The last 4 years in fantasy, I've been weak on bars, and I don't get it. Whatever. You can find gymnasts who have a good bars average, and then put them into your draft, and hopefully you get them. So it's just Road to Nationals Gymnastics is kind of the site to take out. So it's girls. So I'll answer your question. It was kind of a long way. It's girls that are going to school, like college, but they are competing in gymnastics. It's their sport. It's kind of like college football, but it's the same. It's for gymnastics.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. And now I'll explain it a little better. That's good to know, and I'm going to really look into this, and I'm curious to see where it goes. I'm really curious to start watching college gymnastics. I never thought of it before, but I'm really excited to see how it goes this season.
Actually, it's funny enough, University of Utah also has a recruits is Michaela Skinner, who competed at trials. She's a big freshman recruit. They consistently break the attendance record for gymnastics meets and actually rival some football teams because of how big their stadium is for gymnastics. They are so loud, and it's kind of incredible that up until, I'm going to get this wrong, but I'm guessing 2000, maybe, they'd won the most NCAA titles for gymnastics. Now, granted, NCAA gymnastics is a little weird in its early history because it didn't start out as NCAA. It started out as I'm going to get the name wrong again. It didn't start out as NCAA, so it's a little weird in their history. But yeah, Utah is now coming back again as a powerhouse. So, and they're now back in the Pac-12, since the Pac-12 became the Pac-12 and not Pac-10. It used to be a different conference. But they're a really good school to watch. So it's just going to be interesting to see how things shake out with the new freshman class and who competes what. There are a lot of, if you follow gymnastics, there are a lot of former elites that this is their freshman class. So it's going to be interesting to see how they deal with competing week after week. And that's the other thing you'll notice when you watch college gymnastics is these girls are competing week after week, number after number, and it's a little different atmosphere. It's a little different to watch, and you'll see a lot of taped body parts. Don't be alarmed. It's just because they actually, when they practice at, they're in college, they are limited to the number of hours they can practice. So they don't practice a lot on hard surfaces. So that's why you see a lot more taped stuff. So they want to protect that, those joints.
Yeah, I see that a lot in different kinds of sports. I see it. I'm a competitive runner myself, and I see that in a lot of my sport too. It's a lot of the K tape they use, and I think it's great because it really helps a lot. And I see that all the time, and because I'm a competitive athlete myself, I'm like, oh, okay, they're using the K tape. They probably have this injury, that injury, this injury, that injury. But as long as they're being safe, I'm just happy that they're okay.
Yeah, they're limited to 20 hours a week. Might be 30, but I'm not sure about that in terms of.
Is it their age, or is it because of the fact that they're also in school?
It's also because they're in school. They're athletes. The term is scholar athlete, and NCAA tries to force that scholar athlete part of it. So they're limited to the number of hours. Any college sport is limited to the number of hours they can train.
That makes sense. And now, speaking of the fact that they are scholar athletes, do they also have to keep a certain GPA in order to stay in the sport? Like, if they fall underneath one, do they completely kiss their chances of competing abroad? Because I know that's what happens in the football, at least here in Penn State. But I was wondering if it's the same thing in gymnastics as well.
It depends on the school. I know that you can be put on academic probation, but it really depends on the schools. And gymnastics is a weird sport in that these girls are highly trained and they're used to being so focused. And so most of them don't have a problem. Most of them are 4.0 students because they're so used to being focused and knowing how to manage their time. So you don't see a lot of, I've only known one or two cases of gymnasts being on academic probation. It's extremely rare in gymnastics to go on academic probation.
I wonder why that is. I'm really curious about that because I know certain sports, a lot of their times, academic probation is a really big issue. I wonder why it's not in gymnastics.
I think because they're perfectionists and they are more, because gymnastics takes so much more of your time, that, a lot of these girls, even at level 10, are in the gym for, 4 hours. That's not a whole lot of time when school gets out. So I think it's because they know how to manage their time a lot better than a lot of other sports. And that's not to say that other sports don't have driven athletes. It's just, I think, the mentality of gymnastics and girls in gymnastics comes down to being a lot of times perfectionists, and a lot of times you're in the gym a lot more than other athletes might be. So I think that's the biggest issue, is why you don't see it in gymnastics.
Yeah, that makes sense. I didn't think of it that way, but they are perfectionists. I've seen it a lot from watching gymnastics myself. But yeah, I didn't think that there was a correlation between that. But now that you explain it that way, it makes a lot of sense. Now, who are your top picks for fantasy gymnastics so far this year?
So my top draft pick for fantasy gymnastics is Katie Gailey out of Alabama. I had her on my team last year. She did phenomenal for me, so I want her back so bad. She's a great all-around gymnast. I actually don't pick a lot of freshmen towards the top, just because you don't know if they're going to compete or not. Gymnastics is kind of a little like high school, and the freshmen don't get to do a lot at the beginning. They might towards the end. It kind of depends on the program, but they might towards the end and or where the team is weak. UCLA has a couple of their freshmen will probably compete towards the beginning just because they're a little weak on vault and they have some really good vaulters in their freshman class this year. So it kind of depends on, I think, in terms of the freshman class, probably the biggest names that I think might be a player are Kyla Ross and Madison Koshin. I think who else is in the freshman class? So it kind of depends on what I'm looking for in terms of drafting. I have to go back and look. I think my top 10 are all people who are sophomores and above, just because I know their scores and I know their potential. So that's how I do my draft. I'm hoping this year is Elizabeth Price's year. She's a 2012 Olympic alternate. She was phenomenal for Stanford last year, or last 2 years, I should say. She's a junior this year, which is hard to believe. So she is going to be a force for them, and I'm hoping that she'll win the all-around this year at nationals. If she doesn't get hurt playing, she doesn't get hurt. Who else did I know? There's a couple of girls at Florida who were former elites. I'm really curious to see how the University of Washington does, because they have a new head coach who is a 2000 Olympian, and I loved her in 2000. I was obsessed with her in 2000. Not in a bad way, but loved her. So I'm super excited to see how Washington does. She's been their beam coach for the last couple of years, and their beam is exquisite. Washington, I think, has some of the best beam. So I'm super excited to see how Washington does just with a new head coach. And so, and same with Florida. This is their second year under her. I think Florida also technically has a new coach, but this is her second year. Preseason poll from the coaches is Oklahoma's number 1 and Florida number 2. So that should be interesting to see how that battles out towards nationals. We head towards nationals. But yeah, I think it kind of depends on. I have my favorites that I really want, and have my favorites that I really want to do well. But it kind of depends on how the season goes.
Yeah, it's really you never know what's going to get in there. But I'm curious. Like I said, that's my and my mind sounds like I'm a robot. I guess we're in football and high school right now.
I didn't hear any of that. I literally had heard nothing of that because you're cutting in and out.
Yeah, you're cutting out too. I don't know what's going on today, but we're having fun at least. At least we're learning something, even though we sound like we're underwater like a bunch of robots.
Not even snowing here. It was snowing earlier.
It's not snowing, but it's supposed to, and it's really cold. I can't really see out my window right now, but it looks like it's about to snow any moment. Yay, I hate snow, but what are you going to do about it? I'm prepared. As long as it doesn't snow 2 weeks from today, yesterday rather, because my sister's getting married in 13 days, and I'm so excited. But it's in the middle of, the beginning of the winter, so I hope there's no snow, but yay, Melanie, for getting married, finally. I'm so excited. I think you've been with me planning the wedding since, actually, you've known them all this since they've started dating, since day one, so the wedding day is almost here. I can't believe it. It's so exciting.
Yeah, so yesterday was ridiculous. I was sitting last night in my apartment in t-shirts and shorts because it was so freaking hot in my apartment. It was awful. It was really? Yeah. It's because I live on the 3rd floor and everybody's heat rises up, and yeah.
Yeah, I can see where that would get a little bit annoying, but I'd rather that than be freezing all the time like I am at my other job. Usually, I'm like in 3 sweatshirts and like, okay, then I have to go back and forth into a cooler. So I'm like, ooh, it's cold. I feel like I'm on the Titanic, but
Yeah, I mean, I could open the door, but it gets really loud because I can hear the freeway, and it's like, I don't want to open the door.
no, I wouldn't want to do that either. But I'm paranoid as well, so I wouldn't want to do that in the first place. But
Well, I'm on the 3rd floor, so I'm not too worried about anybody getting.
yeah, that's true. You got a point there, but I don't know. So, what else do you think is going to go on with this gymnastics stuff? Anything else you want to add about it?
It's definitely something that most people don't see because they don't televise it on like ABC. So, it's very interesting, and the meets are different than. That's the thing. So the meets are a little different than what you saw at the Olympics. So most gymnastics meets, it's only 2 schools. So it's like, let's say it's UCLA and Stanford. It's one gymnast at a time, and let's say at the meet is at UCLA. UCLA will start on vault, Stanford will start on bars, and then they'll switch. Then the next rotation, Stanford or UCLA will be on beam, Stanford will be on floor, and then they'll switch, and UCLA ends on floor.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's usually meets like that. There are a couple meets where it's quad meets, so there's 4 schools. And I've never actually seen one because they don't televise those usually. So I don't know exactly how those go. So usually meets are just 2 schools. You do get, yeah, so it's a little different than the Olympics. So it's nice to watch because you can see every single routine, which is great. Gymnastics fans complain about is that they don't get to see every routine. So for NCAA, you can see every routine. It's awesome. Until you get to postseason. Postseason happens, so schools get qualifying scores. You have to get, I think it's 5 scores. 2 of them have to be away scores, so not at home. And they count their weighting. So the higher scores you can get towards 200, the better. That's your cap goal is 200. You can't get any more than 200. And then, so good scores are like 197, 198. Those are good regional qualifying scores. Then they will go to their conference championships. So Pac-12, SEC, Big Ten, that sort of thing. They compete there in 2 rotations. So the morning session and the afternoon session, or at least for Pac-12, this is how it is. Per session, and you get a conference championship. Those teams, plus those with the regional qualifying scores, get seeded into sectionals. The top 2 teams from sectionals go to nationals.
Oh, okay.
You have what's called Super 6 at nationals. And then those at nationals compete, and the final 4 compete for a national title. So Super 6 is like super, it's loud, it's crazy. I don't know, you might be able to still watch Super 6 from last year. I don't know about that. It was streamed live on ESPN. And they had the cameras for each event and then an all-around camera. So it was kind of awesome. It was kind of like the Olympics this year.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then it's loud. It's so loud. It's because you have, 4 events going on, and it's just like teams are cheering and whatnot. And then they stopped last year doing event finals. They used to do event finals the 3rd day of competition at nationals. But instead they just counted the top scores last year during Super 6. And those were your event championships, or champions, because they just felt like event championships were kind of an afterthought. So they didn't do them this year.
Yeah, so it's really interesting, and I'm excited. And I wish they would have a full-on gymnastics channel, like on like DirecTV or something like they have for football. They're like this big NFL channel, it's all NFL all the time. I wish it would have something like that for gymnastics, so I can catch up and I can know exactly what's going on and maybe watch stuff from years past. But DirecTV, Dish, if you're listening, we would love this. We have 2 people ready to sign a petition for this to happen.
Well, you kind of can. It's called Flow Gymnastics, and you can. They do have a subscription service. I don't know what it entails because I kind of boycott them for other drama. Yeah, I'll tell you later.
Okay.
But they will broadcast. I don't know which meets they're doing this year, but they will broadcast their meets. Yeah, you kind of have to either know somebody with a cable login or get a VPN. That's it, yeah, it sucks, but that's just it's because gymnastics is not. It's not a marquee sport technically, even though it's the most watched sport of the Olympics. It's not a marquee sport for NCAA.
That's unfortunate because you would think because it's so popular at the Olympics, it would be more popular and more people would want to watch. But I find that very interesting. But what are you going to do?
Well, you would think that Texas would also have a Division I team, but they don't.
Exactly. What's going on with that?
The only Texas Christian Women's University, I think is the name of it. They do have a gymnastics team, but it's Division II or Division III school, so they don't compete for the most part in Division I, obviously. But yeah, they do not have a Division I, and it's just because of Title IX. That their balance of sports within their Division I universities does not allow them to have a gymnastics team. Sammy?
I'm hoping that now that fantasy gymnastics is really taking off and we're seeing more and more of it, maybe it'll become a big sport like football and more people will watch. But I think it's going to take a lot of time, but I have a feeling eventually it'll get that big. But I think it's going to take a lot of time before that actually happens. We need people like us to actually bring attention to it because we're such big fans. And Kelly, too, unfortunately, couldn't be with us today. But the 3 of us alone, with our excitement and our fanaticism, maybe people will actually watch my show and maybe bring attention to gymnastics through that. But I don't know. I just want to see more of it.
I don't think so. I mean, in person, they don't have a problem. Well, in person, they don't have a problem filling meets. It's a matter of national broadcasts, and they've had this discussion for years of how to make it more popular, but I don't think it'll ever happen just because the money is not there. The money in advertising, it's money in advertising, and that's what pays for football is advertising, and it's just not there.
It's unfortunate. So, I wish that someone would want to do advertising for gymnastics, but one of those things that just sucks because, like I said, the 3 of us are huge fans of it, but it seems like it's one of those things that should be taking off, but it's not.
Yeah, I've lived with it for years, so it's like, it's what it is.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I'm not holding back hope that one day it actually happens. I mean, I know it's not, but I'm holding out hope. You know me, I hold out hope for everything. It's like I hold out hope on Dancing with the Stars that certain people get better partners every season, but, not naming names or anything, but you know what I mean. It's like you hold out hope for something to happen even though you know it's not, but you know what? You know me, I'm just optimistic. I'm just going to sit here hoping that one day gymnastics makes it big and we're all big fans and we get to see it more like we see football.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the same with figure skating. And if you want to, there's actually a great book written by a friend of mine. It's called Skating on Air. And she looks at the history of skating and broadcasting. And it's very interesting of how figure skating was this huge marquee sport in the 90s, and now you rarely see it on television.
I know. I hate that. I love watching figure skating. I think I watched it since I was little. I was obsessed, Michelle Kwan, Christine Yamaguchi, Carla Pinski. I used to love watching them. And of course, now it's very rare that you see it unless it's in the Winter Olympics. And even in Sochi 2014, I don't remember it being as big as it used to be. I was really disappointed in it. And it actually, come to think of it, the only figure skating I really remember making a big deal out of was the ice dancing with Meryl Davis and Charlie White. Those are like the really ones I really only remember making a big deal out of.
There was some other stuff, but yeah, I mean, I highly recommend checking out Kelly's book. It's called Skating on Air. You can find it wherever books are sold, on Amazon, on Kindle. And she does a lot of she interviews a ton of people. Like, I'm surprised how many people she got, like, to actually talk about why figure skating isn't, so prominent anymore. So it's a great look at the industry of figure skating and broadcasting.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to look into that, and I think I'm going to have her as a guest on the show because she sounds really fascinating, and I would love to hear her take on it. That outside of reading the book, I would love to hear her take on what she thinks about it as well.
Yeah.
It's sad because it's such good sports that you and I grew up with. I mean, we're about the same age, and we grew up with all this stuff, and now it just seems like it's disappearing along with hair scrunchies and big hair, I guess. I mean, we don't see any of this anymore, and it's really, I have to say, it's really depressing because it's almost like a part of my childhood is leaving. Because I remember watching all this when I was a little girl, watching the Olympics, and I used to take gymnastics. I'm like, oh, I want to be like her. I want to be like her, which obviously didn't happen because I'm sitting here and I'm not an Olympic gymnast. But, it's just, part of my childhood, and I feel like it's disappearing, and it's really disappointing, and I really wish they would bring it back and bring more attention to these sports.
Yeah, I mean, to some respect, I do understand it because of money, and that's the main reason. But at the same time, it's like you have these two big marquee events that are the marquee events of the Olympics, and yet they don't get the same airtime between Olympics. And it's very, yeah, I mean, I get it, but I don't. It's frustrating.
It is what it is, but it doesn't mean I have to be happy about it or that I have to give up hope that one day it'll go back to the way it used to be. Because I would have loved to have my future children and my goddaughter watch this with me one day and be like, oh, this is what I watched when I was little, and I would love to share it with you, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen unless we watch the Olympics. But I'm still going to watch it. I'm still going to support it any way I can by having shows like this and watching in the ways that you've mentioned before and playing fantasy gymnastics if they ever have it, fantasy figure skating. I almost said fantasy figure football. I don't know how that would work. Many people skating, playing football. I don't know.
Believe it or not, there actually is fantasy figure skating, Sammy.
There is! Lovely. We're going to have to talk about that at some point, too, because are they going to be having figure skating coming up soon?
Well, so it's done through the U.S. Figure Skating organization.
Okay.
And it's done through the start of, what's officially the start of skating season, which is Skating America. And I haven't played it in a couple of years. But basically, you go in and pick, who you think is going to finish in each event for the Grand Prix series, which is 6 events throughout the world, and then you get points for if they finish based on where they finish. And then you, whoever makes the Grand Prix final, you pick who you think will finish in each discipline, and you get points for that. And the people with the most points win at the end of the season.
Oh, okay. I would like to try out as well.
Yeah, so if you Google fantasy figure skating, U.S. figure skating, it should bring up the page for it. You can sign up, although the season is pretty much over in terms of the Grand Prix events. But there's always next season because they do events every year. So, yeah, there's fantasy figure skating.
Every time there's fantasy ballroom dancing, I'm going to be in 7th heaven here.
Yeah, that one would be tough just because of how many different disciplines there are.
Exactly. I knew it wasn't a thing, but I figured if there really was, I would be in heaven here because I love ballroom dancing too.
That would be kind of insane considering there are 5 senior divisions, 4 youth divisions, rising, elite, open, and then elite plus pro-am. Like, it would just be insane. Like,
yeah, Technically, I don't think it would actually work.
Yeah, you'd have to only really do it either like pick a like elite or pro and just do pro, and then pro for Latin, pro for standard, because that's the only way you can do it. Like, that's just be insane.
Oh, I know. I'm just thinking about it. And it's just like, even when they had Fantasy Dancing with the Stars a couple of years ago, even that was really complicated to try and figure out. I can imagine if we did it with like the American Ballroom Challenge or an actual ballroom competition. It just seems absolutely impossible.
Yeah, like I look at the results because I get USDA's magazine because I used to belong to a USDA club, and I look in the results there and I'm just like, oh my god, like how many rounds did they have to go through to get a finalist? And it's like
crazy. Oh my gosh, it's absolutely insane.
I know. I kind of want to go to Blackpool just to watch the insanity.
We should go one day. We should try to make it on our bucket list item just to see if we can go. I mean, it's going to cost an uber amount of money and be like probably impossible to get in, but we should put it on our bucket list to go.
Well, I mean, you can buy tickets to go. It's just kind of like a sporting event. But yeah, just to see the insanity of those opening rounds, just kind of to see that, just to see that all that would be awesome.
We should try it. We should get a bucket list item for Football on High Heels presents. Two of us are going to go, and then we're going to broadcast live about it on the insanity, because I think that would be just absolutely hilarious and fun, and you and I would have a blast doing it together.
Either that or I win the lottery and I compete in ballroom and then make it to Blackpool.
There you go. There you go. Another bucket list item. Start playing the lottery, girl. We're going to make this happen.
I'll just bet on horses. Bet on horses, it's easier than the lottery.
That's true. Yeah, I can do that. But, we can have fun with this. It's a fantasy. We can pretend.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we are almost out of time. I just want to point out real quick, we discussed this the other day, going back to ballroom dancing. Derek Huff no longer on Dancing with the Stars. What do you think about that?
I'll tell you, Jennifer. We've talked about this before, but I'll believe it when I see it. I don't think, well, especially, so Len actually has one more year on his contract. And apparently he said in an interview just recently that he was not happy about that. He likes the way Strictly Come Dancing does 1-year contracts only. And so it'll be interesting to see if he stays or if he, I don't know, it'll be interesting to see next season. It'll be interesting to see who they are looking at, and then whether or not other things happen. So, yeah, I mean, I'll believe it when I see it. I mean,
yeah. But I heard about that earlier in the week that he got a Jennifer Lopez show, and I was like, I'm thrilled for him, but I'm going to miss him on Dancing with the Stars. So we'll see what happens. But if Glenn does decide not to renew his contract, there are a few ballroom dancers I would love to see take his place. Like, Shirley Ballas would be a good one. She's of course, Mark's mom, and she's really good. And there are quite a few really good ballroom dancers I can see taking his place. But it's going to be really interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I fear is that he leaves, that they'll offer Max his spot.
I don't think that's going to happen, because he said right now, because he's going to be a father, actually next month, because he said he's just done with all that stuff and he's just going to focus on being a full-time dad. So I really don't think he's going to get it. Oh, Tony Meredith is the other one that I think would be an interesting choice.
Yeah, I was talking with a friend of mine. I'd really like to see either Louis become a judge. I think Damian Whitewood would be another one I'd like to see. Jonathan Roberts has been doing some judging in California, so I would like to see him back.
Yes.
I don't think that'll ever happen. I think he's done with the show. But that's for other reasons. Yeah, there are a couple. Nick Kostovich, I would think he'd be awesome.
I love him.
Yeah. Shirley would be great. I just, like with Julianne, I have reservations with her as a judge, just because of drama and, well, because of Mark, and I mean, she's a great dancer. I just have some reservations.
Yeah, I agree. And the thing is, she trained almost every single dancer that was a professional in the show. Actually, I think almost all the people that have won have at one point or another trained with her and Quirky. So I think actually, as much as I would love to see her as a judge, thinking about it now, it might be a conflict of interest because she has trained a lot of the dancers that have been on the show.
Yeah, but it's the same thing. You know, Len technically has judged them all too because he was a judge before the show, and they've all competed professionally with the exception of certain people. So the dance floor world is such a small world that it's kind of hard not to.
Yeah.
You have to be the current pro to, you know, I mean, there are some current pros I would love to see on the show, but it's such a small world that you see, especially, I mean, Louis, he danced with Karina, he, has trained with others, so it's just such a small world that it's kind of like, it's hard not to.
Yeah, it's true. Now we'll see what happens, and I'm curious to see what happens in the next season, season 24, which starts in March, and we'll be covering that like there's no tomorrow because I'm obsessed. So we'll see what happens. And we are out of time. Thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. I know I love discussing all this stuff with you. You know, we get off topic, but as my brother and his friends say on their podcast, randomness is the gift, which y'all should be tuning into B-Movie Bros as well because they're going to be on in a couple of weeks, and they're awesome, not just because it's my brother and one of his best friends, because they really say it how it is about movies in the world. So tune into them as well, and make sure you subscribe to this channel. There's a cute little subscribe button when you go to Football and High Heels on YouTube. So don't forget to subscribe and tune in. And I'm on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, Football and High Heels, but on Twitter, it's Football HI Heels because someone took the Football High Heels. So make sure to follow me there as well. And again, thank you so much for going on the show. I really appreciate it. And I love to have you back as soon as possible to discuss the goings on in gymnastics.
Yeah, definitely.
Yep, you're always welcome. It's like you don't even need an invitation. Just be like, yo, I want to be on the show, and I'll make it happen. So thank you all for tuning in. See you next time. And as always, thank you for tuning in. Bye.
Bye.